Hello, everyone, and welcome to the N.E.R.D podcast, a podcast about never-ending, ridiculous discussions about gaming or other things in the entertainment industry. My name is Brian, and I'm along here today with my friend Dom Spizzirri. How are you doing, Dom?
Brian, I'm doing great. It's post E3. We got a lot of new game announcements. I'm ready to dive into it.
We got a lot to talk about today. Why don't we start out with E3 and a lot of the major stuff. We talked before the show about what was the biggest thing to happen. It was really Microsoft and Bethesda in that acquisition. So why don't we start off with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, without a doubt, I am a huge Nintendo fan. I'm a big fan of Sony, but obviously Sony didn't really have a big presence. And we're definitely going to get into Nintendo later, but I think Xbox and Bethesda, they killed it. They came in with probably, I think, the longest show. Correct me if I'm wrong there, but everything they showed may not speak to everybody, but I think they had the most games that went through like the most kind of gamers. And the fact that I think they said they had 30 games and 27 of them are on Game Pass. If you're a Game Pass subscriber, it's a done deal. Like if you're on Game Pass and you watch that showcase, I'm sure you had a smile on your face the entire time.
Buy it now. I am putting money. I'm throwing money at it here in a minute as soon as I have some more time off work to do this. And yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. It's a really exciting time to be an Xbox player or a Game Pass player, which is awesome because fun fact about me, it's the first episode, I'm a PC guy. I'm a Sony guy. And as a PC player, you see a lot of games, Cry Me a River, but they stay at full price. Nobody really ratchets them down. So you're generally, if you want to play a game, it's full price. Game Pass is putting out new games at a quick rate for just the price of the service. And so that's super awesome. A big thing with that is their acquisition of Bethesda. A lot of your favorite games, like Skyrim, Fallout, are now all on Game Pass. And you get new games. They're coming out with this Starfield, right? And that's a biggie just from the fact of it's a new IP, and we get to see kind of the next gen debut from Bethesda on only Xbox and PC technically. But how do you feel about that? How do you feel about Xbox and Bethesda just having this marriage now, and Sony and everybody else can just cry a river?
Well, it's funny because Bethesda did just comment on that. But we should clarify that Ghostwire Tokyo and Deathloop, I believe is what it's called, the game by Arcane, the people who did Dishonored and Prey.
Right.
Those are both coming to PlayStation 5, I believe, this year. I know Deathloop is coming this year. I believe Ghostwire's as well. And they're coming to PlayStation 5 exclusively. They are not coming to Xbox, and they are Bethesda. But they'll end up...
And that's from prior contracts and all that. So they kind of get the tail end of it.
Correct. But my assumption is 12 months from now, they're going to be on Game Pass. And as an Xbox owner myself, that is amazing. I think it's really good for gamers. And I understand, like, exclusives are... I mean, they're the bread and butter to console gaming. I think it is important to have them, but honestly, they're almost overall not a good thing for the industry. I mean, if every game was an exclusive to a console, that means everyone has to own both consoles, and obviously not a lot of people can afford that. But the fact that these games are on Game Pass, and you don't even have to buy an Xbox anymore. Like you can have it on PC. I know Microsoft is putting Game Pass pre-installed with, I believe, Samsung. Correct me if I'm wrong there. Samsung TVs, or if you could just buy an Xbox One, not an Xbox One, an Xbox Series S for I think $299. $300 is a little bit to ask for, but for $300 and $999 a month, if you don't want Xbox Live aspect of it, you get almost every single Bethesda game, and Halo
Right.
and Gears. So it's great. It just
It's big
it
time.
makes a deal that seems unbelievable even better. And how is that even possible at this point?
You're exactly right. And we both work very hard at our day jobs. So do a lot of people, and we want to put our dollars towards something that has value. And there's a reason why people stopped having, Xbox Gold, or was it PlayStation Plus? Sure, you get a free game all month, but you have to keep up, obviously the subscription to keep going. But you get Game Pass. You don't just get a free game a month. You have an entire gaming library to choose from, and of great games. You had Gears 5, I believe it was, on there that I, with one of my friends, played on PC, and it was just super fun. You're exactly right. It's such a great platform, whether you're on Xbox, whether you're on PC, to be able to just have all these different games at your fingertips to play.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. But to just actually, let's just get into the actual announcement. So I know they did announce they have two brand new games that came in via CG trailers. I know one big one that a lot of people like to talk about is Redfall. Did you watch that trailer?
Redfall, remind me of which one that was. There's so many.
Oh, yeah, no, I understand that. That was the one at the ending. It seemed very much like Left 4 Dead, but with not with zombies, with vampires.
Oh, yeah, where they all had like superpowers, and yeah, they're just killing, like, somebody was like a teleporter. Yeah, I remember that. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, it definitely caught my attention. It's just another one of those games where, it's a CG trailer. It doesn't tell me anything really about what the actual game's like, but it's Arcane. And earlier this year, I played every single arcade game because of Game Pass. I played both Dishonored and I played Prey for the first time ever, and I'm excited. I'm excited for anything with Arcane's name on it now. And just watching that CG trailer, that's fine. I already have my subscription. Let's go. And that's why, in my opinion, and I don't know what your opinion is, but just right off the bat, I'm going to say it. Xbox had the best showcase. It killed it. They were the best this
Oh
year.
yeah, without a
and
doubt.
it's just that reason. I would have passed on Redfall in my sleep, but it's on Game Pass. I already have it.
Give it a shot.
Exactly.
What's going to stop you? Nothing but time. And Dom, I think both you and I are almost 30 or are 30, and we both know as adults, time is just not always there anymore. So just being able to have this pass that you can jump in and out of is awesome. And to be clear, we're not getting paid by Game Pass. We're not getting paid by Xbox. It's just that good. And with that, one reason we're starting this podcast, is that you and I are just kind of average Joes. We have been playing games for years. I've been playing games since Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time on the old Nintendo 64 back in 90, I want to say 8, I think is when I got it. And we've been watching E3 for a very long time, probably over a decade. And we just kind of are giving our own opinions to everything. And with that, watching E3 for over a decade, one thing I noticed is, because of COVID, the shortness of it. We were talking before the show about how you really just had Microsoft, Ubisoft, Capcom, and Square Enix. Normally you have Nintendo, normally you have PlayStation, but they're obviously absent doing their own thing. Wanted to talk to you a little bit about, Ubisoft, Capcom, and Square Enix. How did you feel about the lineup this year compared to last year, or years in the past?
Well, I don't want to be negative. I really don't.
Do it. You won't.
This is the first, because I know Ubisoft has done their own. Square had one back in 2019, and then obviously E3 didn't do 2020. And this is the first one for Capcom. And then there was a whole number of other ones. I know Bandai Namco did one as well. So that being said, I do want to say, I know these developers, like they're going through a lot, and game development, even without the pandemic and 2020 as a whole, game development is hard. I get that. We see Twitter, we see the negativity, and we've read the books of these employees doing crunching. So I do want to say, I don't want to bash them. I know they're doing hard work, and this is not a reflection on any of them. But man, were those conferences bad and just boring.
Oh God,
they were. I mean,
yes.
But it's just my opinion, of course. Ubisoft did have the new Mario Rabbids game. Again, huge Nintendo fan. I loved the first Mario Rabbids, so I got really
You're
excited.
all over it.
Oh yeah.
And I am just doing the yawn emoji over here. Like, I've never been that. I've never been that guy. And Ubisoft has great games. You obviously have the bread and butter of Assassin's Creed. But outside of that, they really just didn't do much. I would have, I've been thinking about getting into Division 2.
Mm-hmm.
As you know, the older you get and people move, just kind of easier to get in an MMO or something like that and just play for a little bit with your friends, talk about your day and all that. And I would have loved to have seen some more. I think it came out last year, I want to say. Or maybe the year prior, and I would love to see some stuff about that, but there was just not really anything. You got to build off your IPs. Speaking of building off your IPs, how about Square Enix in Final Fantasy, and Final Fantasy, and Final Fantasy, and even more Final Fantasy that seemingly nobody really cares about?
Oh, that's not true. People care about it. People are actually upset.
You're putting one... Well, people care about... Okay, tell me more.
So, when they announced the
we can agree to disagree on
the
this.
Pixel Master, I believe is what they called, for the first 6. When they announced the Pixel Master, a lot of people wanted those because they wanted the original, the first 6 Final Fantasies from the NES and SNES era to be available. And when they announced, like, hey, you're going to be able to download them all for your phone, a lot of fans got disappointed in
that's
that.
fair.
Granted, it is on Steam, so all your computer guys, you can get it over there. But all of us console players, like, this would be great for the Switch. Why isn't this coming to the Switch?
Oh, God, that was the exact... You're exactly right. That was the first thought I had, is you're at the handheld game, you're in the airport, you're on your phone, sure, but I sell cars. I can't tell you how many times I walk through the lounge and people are on a Switch. It'd be perfect for it.
Yeah, it would. Now, granted, I'm not a huge Final Fantasy guy. I did play the remake of 7. I loved it. I actually do have Integrate downloaded on my PS5 right now. I still haven't jumped into it. I'll get there. It'll happen. But Ratchet and Clank came out, all right? Priorities.
That's a thing.
But other than that, like...
Which we'll talk about on a later episode. You'll review it for us, I'm sure.
Oh, absolutely. I actually just beat it, so... quick review. It's perfect.
Not a baby.
It's amazing. Please buy it. But
10 out of 10?
Okay, it's maybe 9, but it's still the most beautiful game I've ever played currently. But to jump back to Square Enix, or Final Fantasy specifically, there was a rumor that they were going to do like a Bloodborne style Final Fantasy 1, right? And they did reveal that. And it ended up being a lot more like Devil May Cry, which still sounds great. Except, I don't know if you saw the trailer, but it was a pretty chaotic trailer, if you get what I'm saying.
Oh, God. Oh, God. Yeah, that was a very... If you followed JRPGs for any amount of time, they always kind of hit on themes, right? Mm-hmm. And they'll repeat that, especially like Hideo Kojima games. And with Final Fantasy, it's all about something. In this case, it was about a guy named Chaos. And if you made a drinking game into the amount of times that guy said Chaos in that trailer, you'd have been schlitzed by the time that thing ended. Yeah. And it was only a few minutes long.
Oh, yeah. And it just really looks, and I don't know about you, but like I watched that and I went, did 2007 release a game in 2021? Like what? Like it just it looks really dated. And again, no, I don't ever want to shame the employees and the developers of this game, you know, but it seems like a
No, but you're allowed to be critical.
oh, absolutely, I get that, but I never want to seem like I'm shaming them or anything like that. But it does, it looks like a game out of time. And I saw a lot of disappointed fans.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a huge Final Fantasy guy. I'm going to be honest with you. I wasn't going to buy this game regardless. But it is, watching that trailer, I couldn't help but go, oof. For all the fans who wanted this to be cool, it doesn't look cool. And it's a shame. And the demo, I don't know if you heard about the demo, but the demo came out on the PlayStation Store and was corrupted. They couldn't even use it for like 3 days.
Oh my gosh. Which, to be fair, like you mentioned earlier, when you have devs working from home, and I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Japan's been hit pretty hard by COVID, way more than we have been in the States. So their ability to probably get with their teams has been severely hindered. But having something in the PlayStation Store that's corrupted, that won't download, isn't exactly a winning formula for something.
Oh yeah, not for this one. I know it does work now, so if you have a PlayStation 5, you can go check it out. I'm not sure if it's on PlayStation 4, but I'm personally going to pass on it. They didn't really sell it to me, but if it does come out this year, which I believe it is, hey, best of luck. I hope the fans like it. But it was a rough one. It was a pretty big oof. But I think
much like Ubisoft, big oof.
Yeah, I'm not crazy about Ubisoft personally. I know they showed Far Cry, which I've never played a Far Cry before. It just really doesn't do anything for me. But beyond Mario Rabbids, what else was at Ubisoft? I'm almost not even remembering.
There's a reason why we're not remembering, and I believe it was because it just wasn't noteworthy. And it's just sad. I think you have these devs, especially the Japanese ones, like Capcom, like Square Enix, who have, through our youths, both being, in single digit ages in the 90s and then being teenagers in the aughts, we grew up on JRPGs. That's where all the good games came from. Before Xbox, you'd look to Japan and what would be coming out, and we'll probably touch on more games in the future in some sort of segment. But I almost wanted to turn it off. Nothing moved the radar. Nothing really is like, oh man, I had to have it, except for one game I'll be talking about a little bit more in a bit, which was a huge surprise, and they talked about it on plenty of different shows that were going on E3. It's the Guardians game. The Guardians of the Galaxy. How did they keep that quiet with the internet the way it is, with leaks happening left and right? God only knows. But you spoke about Devil May Cry. That has a lot of comparisons to Devil May Cry, but graphically, gorgeous game. I would say that would be the one out of the 3 shows that I would be the most excited for.
I think I could agree. It's, again, probably number 2 for me. Just because Mario Rabbids, I love the first one so much. If you own a Switch, please buy the first one. But yeah, I agree. Guardians of the Galaxy trailer came on. It did, at least through my stream. I'm hoping it was just a stream. It seemed like the game, had a little bit of trouble keeping up with itself. So when they revealed at the end the box art and everything, to me, I can't help but go, oof. It looks like, to me, and no offense to developers, it looks like an 8 out of 10. I'm going to be honest. It's one of those games where, I want to see what the reviews are like before I personally want to delve my money into it. And I hope for anyone who's listening,
Sure.
You understand. Brian and I, we're just 2 dudes living in 2 different states, recording these. We don't get these games. We're spending our hard-earned money on these games. So anything we talk about, we pay for, we bought ourselves. And this is one of those games, when it comes out, I might not do it. Just because it's...
Sure,
I feel it can go either way. But I'm not going to say, it doesn't look good. I have my eye on it. It's definitely in the maybe category for me, but I feel like this game could either be the best 8 out of 10 game ever, or this could come out and it's hey, you know what? If you're a fan, pick it up. But if not, pass on it. So I am a little gray on it. I definitely think it is number two for me, um, just because it is kind of a surprise. But something about it just seems like, hey, you know what? This game might not be as good as some people feel about it. Not to be negative on it. I feel like I've been negative, but that's pretty much what it looked like to me.
It's easy to rip, but it's been one of those years where it is just easy to take a backseat and do that. But I don't think your points are invalid. I am excited for it. I think that was the one that caught my eye the most. I played the Marvel Avengers game, also by Square, by a different studio though, and that burnt a lot of people. I think that with the rollout of that game, it rubbed a lot of people raw. It was buggy. It didn't have a whole lot of meat on the bones outside of the main story, and the post launch rollout has been rough. So I think we have that kind of fresh in our minds. Eidos Montreal is best known for making the new rebooted Deus Ex series, which their models in the most recent one, I believe it's Not Mankind Divided, or maybe it is, I can't remember off the top of my head, but like the main character's really good. Outside of that, not so great. So if they keep it as a series that Square Enix has been really good at and just making really good main character models, it looks like a gorgeous game. I love the art direction they took with it. As a comic book nerd, that excites me. Just something new. It's not just a hey, here's this, how's this guy drawn in the comics, and then we're just gonna make that in the video game. No, they took their own spin on it. Peter Quill's mask is a little bit of a mix of how it is in the movies, how it is in the comics, and just their own Square Enix flair, which is almost what we're accustomed to in Square Enix games anymore. That little bit of Final Fantasy and a little bit of everything. And the jury's out. I wasn't expecting it to be a Devil May Cry-ish game with style points. That's the only game I can really think of with style points in the last decade. I mean, that used to be a huge thing in kind of arcade style games. But how you can have your team interact, how you can do the huddle, which is where the characters come together and you can give a pep talk, and depending on how it goes, everybody gets boosted, or they're like, what the hell are you doing, Quill? And, it's just you, because you're jazzed, which we see in the movies, which it's all going to be about the interaction. So if you thread, if the gameplay is fun with the element gun and the RPG elements are fun, and you just tell a good story, that's all it needs to do. And with games being more open and really just more about multiplayer, like the announced, I believe it was Battlefield 2042, correct me if I'm wrong if that's not the title. I like to see the rise of single player games, and that's also why I'm kind of a Sony guy. You get a lot of those God of War, Last of Us, all that good stuff, but the jury's out. Like we were talking about, like you mentioned, it could be an 8 out of 10, still a good game. Is it gonna be great? Is it gonna be good? Are we going to get like a Tomb Raider-esque, just out of nowhere, holy crap, this was a great game? Who knows? But let's segue on to kind of, I mentioned Guardians was one of my big games. Dom, give me your three best or your three favorite games of this E3. I'm going to guess Mario Rabbids was one of them.
Oh, absolutely. That one just grabbed me. And it's only because, again, the first one was a sleeper hit. Everyone saw it and thought it was a joke. But if you give the game a chance, the first Mario Rabbids is just the cutest, most fun game ever. And I know I force a lot of my friends who own a Switch, I force them to buy it whenever it's on sale. I believe it was on sale for $5 during E3. So if anyone has a Switch, if it's still on sale, please check out the first one. As far as the other...
That's beer money right there.
Oh, yeah.
That's easy peasy.
And it's not even that on the game, so it's got a lot of content, too, especially if you get the deluxe version. Anyway, carrying on. As far as other games, I do want to shout out Halo and Kena Bridge of Spirits. We knew about those games, so I'm not really going to talk about them as announcements, so I'd like to kind of go back to like newer games, the ones at E3 that really stole my heart. I would say at the Microsoft show. So for a game that we didn't know about, it was an indie game called Replaced. It's a cyberpunk 2D side scroller, which I'm a huge fan of that. As you're going to find out when I talk about my most anticipated game. It looked really cool. It's really dark. Seems to almost be like somewhat noir, maybe. It has like every single subgenre you could throw in that's really cool, crammed into one. And I don't remember if it's coming out this year or not. But it grabbed my eye, and I definitely went back and watched that trailer like 3 times just because it looked so cool. And
it was so beautiful.
Oh, absolutely. I believe you liked it a lot too. Do you want to talk about it?
That'll be my 3, so I'll let you finish up before I start ranting and raving on that game, because I could just, stylistically, I love it.
All right. So, and I gotta say though, you can take every game we've just talked about though and put it to the side because none of it matters. Because the one game that got announced that made my E3.
Here we go.
I know. Get ready for it.
Tell us, Dom. Come on. Tell us.
19 years in the making. We're getting Metroid 5, Metroid Dread, a game that was announced in 2004, the sequel to Metroid Fusion from 2001. Oh, God, I cried.
Was Metroid Fusion the one on the DS?
It was on the Game Boy Advance. It came out the same day as Metroid Prime on the GameCube.
That's a throwback.
Oh, yeah. I'm a huge Metroid fan. It is like my second favorite game franchise. So when this game came out, I was just... I had trouble breathing. I was so happy. Metroid Dread is definitely something I pre-ordered. It's the one game of this list that's, well, next to Kena, that I've already pre-ordered. That I pre-ordered like the second I could. I'm going to get those amiibo. I am so excited. I'm so happy we're doing another 2D Metroid, a sequel to Fusion, one of my favorite games of all time, and concluding the story between Samus, Arin, and the Metroids. So when that game comes out on October 8th, expect me to really deep dive that one. You better give me a segment because I will go into it. I am so excited. I'm ready. E3 was great.
You got what it was Christmas for you in that regard. You get the presents, you get the socks, you get the new pajamas, you get all the things you just really are like, this doesn't excite me. What is this? Oh, holy God, I got a new console or something like that. It's like, oh, here's the big boy. Here's the one that gets me all jazzed and ready to go.
Oh, absolutely. And I understand that there's been some controversy now that we have the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X out, and games are $70, which is very expensive.
Absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, we can talk about that another day. I have some emotions on that price, but I know a lot of people looked at Metroid Dread and said this is a $60 game, and we're not going to lie, it is not as pretty as Guardians of the Galaxy. It is not as pretty as Replaced. I'm going to be honest, but it is a sequel to a very underrated game. I will say it. Metroid Fusion deserves a lot more love. To a franchise that never sold well on one of the best-selling consoles ever. So it's going to be good. It's going to be great. But I guess I can understand why some people are saying Nintendo games are. They're always a generation behind. Always, at least a generation behind. And now they're almost 2 generations behind with the current Switch. So when you have a brand new 2D side scroller for $60. I can definitely see some people questioning it, and I don't want to say hey, Metroid Dread's not going to be worth the price, because the bottom line is, a game is worth whatever you say it's worth. If you think a game is worth $100,
exactly,
buy that game. And to be honest, The Witcher 3 was probably worth more than $100. We all can probably agree with that, right? And then something like...
It would have been a tough pill to swallow departing with a Benjamin, but we would have, and we'd have loved all 50 hours of it.
Oh, exactly, but still, it's Metroid Dread. It's Metroid 5. It looks so cool, and I hope everyone who owns a Switch at least gives it a look. Definitely gives it a shot. And hey, if 2D side scrollers aren't your thing, Metroid Prime 4 is still coming to Switch. It's still in development. Probably not going to be out for a couple of years.
So they
still,
say.
But, it's still
So
there.
they say.
Hey, it's there.
We will see. Stop me if I can rattle off a list of games that never made it to the light of day.
Oh, God, please don't do this to me.
Oh, I won't. But you mentioned 2004, Game Boy Advance. If somebody was born in 2004, they're still in high school. How old does that make you feel?
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're teenagers playing on our Game Boys back then. So how far the world has come in those years. But one thing that, and you did a top 5 list or a rundown for the show, but in looking at that right now, one thing I'm a little bit surprised, and I'd love for you to touch on here for a second, is the lack of Breath of the Wild being in your top 5 for the second one. I mean, with how critically acclaimed that one was as potentially the best Legend of Zelda game ever, getting the sequel to not be in your top 5, that just made me curious. I was curious of your reasoning for that.
Oh,
is it because of it just wasn't that it didn't move the needle, or is it because other games like Halo or something like that just kind of push it to the side, or were a little bit more exciting?
I think for me, it's of the 5 games I've listed, or at least I mentioned, and obviously I really want to focus on the big 3 that were revealed this year. Zelda Breath of the Wild, I mean, I love Zelda. It's my number 1 franchise. I have multiple Zelda tattoos. I have multiple figurines.
I was about to mention,
yeah.
I'm like,
I have a...
You got some proof.
Oh, yeah, I got the Zelda cred, I'm constantly wearing Zelda shirts, and I love Breath of the Wild. To me, it is... I don't know if I'd say it's the best Zelda, but if someone was to proclaim it as the best Zelda, arguably maybe one of the best games of all time, 100%, I agree with you. You're there, and I wouldn't argue it. As far as Breath of the Wild 2 trailer, this one specifically, it's a combination of things. I think the fact that I don't believe for a second it's coming out in 2022 is factor number 1.
Oh, hell no.
I've been on this rodeo before, Nintendo. I don't believe you until you give me a full date, all right? We all know that's how Nintendo works. They give you a year, add 5. And I think another thing is that Skyward Sword, which the HD remaster is coming out in July. Of course, I pre-ordered it. Is my least favorite Zelda game. And when Breath of the Wild 2 trailer opens with Link falling from the sky, I just went, you killed my hype for Breath of the Wild 2 so hard. Because
in a personal note.
Yeah, I'm reminded now of Skyward Sword. And that's nothing bad about it. I am excited to replay it for the second time on the Switch. But yeah, the second I saw Link falling from the sky, I just went, oh, no, not this again.
No.
But again, it's Breath of the Wild. There's so many aspects of the trailer that looked really cool. The fact that people are questioning whether or not you're even playing as Link, because they didn't show the face of the character, which... that might sound like craziness to you as a not really big Nintendo fan, but like a Zelda fan, it's like we're all looking at it like, who is that? Is that Link?
Well, Link's been in everything.
Yeah, you play as Link. It's
he's
Zelda.
The guy.
Yeah, he's the character. He's the Link to the player. That's hence his name.
He's the shining knight to the princess in distress. Like, you can't have a story like that without your shining knight. Now, I think there was correct me if I'm wrong. I've only seen snippets of the trailer. There was a female, almost maybe protagonist, teased in the trailer.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah. When it comes to when the original trailer came out in 2019, the very first one, which had me screaming at the top of my lungs when I saw that, a lot of people were like,
I can only imagine that right now. I just vividly a picture of you, giddy, hands up, shaking, like high pitched. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing, bringing a tear to my eye right now.
Oh yeah, it's my excitement for Nintendo that no one else can do this to me. But there was always the conversation of whether or not Zelda would actually be the playable character in The Legend of Zelda. And
For once.
she never is, in the spin-off games, she is in Hyrule Warriors, Age of Calamity. You can play as Zelda. You can play as any character in those games, actually. Um,
He plays that big Goron from Ocarina of Time, I think.
oh, absolutely. But, in the mainline Zelda games, you play as Link. So everyone who's debating whether or not we're playing as Link in the Breath of the Wild 2 trailer, like, it's fun to dive into it. My honest thought, this is Zelda. You're playing as Link. Don't think too hard about it. Like, until they say you're not, like,
Sure.
you're playing as Link. Um, and that's probably just how it is. Whether or not there's
Sure.
ever make a game where you don't play as Link is going to be weird. Will that even be a Zelda game at that point? But that's a discussion for another time. But yeah, as far as that trailer, it's exciting for a fan. But yeah, that was the only trailer of the games I mentioned where I saw it and I went, oh no, no.
It's like a bad girlfriend and hearing that song. That was your song. It's like, I love this song, but it takes me back to that place. It just kind of ruins the moment.
Oh, absolutely. But again, we got a while. When that game comes out in 2025, mark my words, we'll talk more about it. But until then,
There you go.
I'll talk about Skyward Sword when I get my copy in July.
There you go. Well, Dom, I think my big three, you can take a guess at which one. I've already mentioned two of them that I like and I'm excited for the most. Guardians. I love me some comic book storylines. It looks exciting. It looks like it's geared up for a ragtag group of adventurers and heroes to go through the galaxy, causing all sorts of mayhem. And I mentioned Replaced as being one of my interesting ones. As a former photographer and just an all-around lover of good graphics, it almost looked like it was like there's ray tracing in it, the way that the beams of light were moving through or past objects and interacting while having this, almost 8-bit world that your character is running around. And it was geometric too, in terms of it wasn't just a side scroller. It was like he moved in almost a curve. Like it wasn't a straight line, it was a curve. And so the geometry moved with it. And that's not something you see in these side scroller 8-bit style games. And how that was, and like the world around him is not necessarily as blocky as the character is. I think there's a portion of the video where he's climbing a sign, a neon sign, and the neon is just lit up with, and if anybody isn't familiar with ray tracing, it's just a different way that light is rendered within a game, making it a little bit more realistic with how it interacts with the objects around it. And so it just makes it more lifelike. And just having that neon sign on like a cold, rainy night, it brought you in with just this unique art style that you haven't seen. Granted, we've seen a cyberpunk game, a cyberpunk 2077. So we kind of are, if you haven't been introduced to the cyberpunk genre, you are getting a little bit more introduced to it. But that was one of my biggest ones, was Replaced and Guardians. As a big Souls-born, if you will, style fan, Elden Ring is exciting to me. I admittedly have not watched the trailer only because I am just kind of doing a blackout on this one. I got my hopes up for Dark Souls 3 in the past, and that one just did not trip my trigger the same way Bloodborne did, or Dark Souls 2, which was the first one I played. When I get my hands finally on a PS5, the remake of Demon Souls, or the remastering, if you will be definitely one that I will dive into. But those are my big three. One thing that I know you and I both wanted to talk to each other about was the omissions in this year's E3, which obviously we didn't have one last year, which I think magnifies the omissions of Sony having some sort of just presence. And Nintendo, now granted, both not manufacturers, but brands have had their, like Nintendo Direct, or Sony has something very similar to get their message out, which, both of us being former journalists, knowing that the way that you PR out your message is super huge, and being able to control it in that regard, it's also super huge. Nothing like being able to mix and master your message instead of just being in the moment on a stage. But I feel like the omissions were really almost heartbreaking in a way. I mean, we had this COVID year where people have died, passed away, now have health issues. There's a lot of pain in the world, and nothing brings people together like just modes of entertainment, TV, movies, games. And just without those two, just Nintendo was there, obviously, you had your trailers, you had your Nintendo Direct, but without, well, let's just be real, Sony pitching God of War Ragnarok. Just throw God of War Ragnarok at me. Take my money, I don't care if that game's $70, $80, $100. Take my money. But without that, I just felt like I had this empty feeling in my chest. And I'm hoping that E3 2022 will kind of bring back those E3 feelings of the past. But E3 has always gone through different, forms. Do you remember when E3 went from, the California, Los Angeles Expo Center to like the smaller part of the Expo Center, where it was almost like you're going from hotel room to hotel room looking at these new games with their setups in it, and that's how the games got out. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah, I remember going to GameStop and buying the E3 DVDs. Do you ever buy those? They're like 3 discs long, each one dedicated to each platform.
Once I figured out how to find it on the internet, there's some different ways. I would just watch the live streams.
Oh, I understand.
And just kind of go from there. That was my immersions, but that makes me feel old now.
Oh, it was. I remember the first DVD I bought was I don't remember what Microsoft, or actually no, I think Microsoft might have been showing off potentially Halo 2 on theirs, and Nintendo had the trailer for Resident Evil 4 and Twilight Princess.
Oh God,
that was my first E3 experience. It was everything, and it's had me ever since then.
Those are some whoppers right there. Remember back to think of how many games sold out of just the ones you just listed off. Like how many units? Those are games that launched 1,000 ships, if you know what I mean.
Resident Evil 4 is still being released. Like they're still making a new one.
Yeah, they're they just came out with like the remakes of Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil 3, all in the same format that Resident Evil 4 made popular. I mean, it's just astronomical.
Yeah.
The effect that game has had. Hell, I'll go out and say, you can look at a lot of third-person shooters that have taken that style of walk around, aim, shoot. You have an inventory system to heart. I mean, Deus Ex, the newer games have a similar, inventory system, like an attaché case almost. So, those are huge throwbacks. But, going back to the Sony bit there, how do you feel about their absence? Did it, you're more of an Xbox, Nintendo guy. I'm a huge Sony guy, PC guy too. What was your takeaway from them not being there? And they're going to have an event. It's not like they're not going to have something. And also, to be fair, in 2019, they also had their own event, but it was live. It was, if you remember, I think it was like The Last of Us 2. Mm-hmm. They had like some outdoor venue where they had a lot of journalists, select personnel only, and had a huge thing with that. But just not having a single presence in E3 proper was kind of weird.
Well, to be honest, I think Sony's never coming back. I think.
Oh, don't say that. Don't say that. That breaks my heart.
I think Sony.
You stop
Sony's
it right now.
Never coming back to E3. And I don't think they need to.
Gamescom, Tokyo Game Show,
maybe, but I don't think they need to be at E3. I think Sony, unless they go down a different path, but where they are now and where they went with PlayStation 4, there's no reason for them to be another light in a sea of lights when they can do something. Because right now they're rumored that they're going to have another state of play in July. There's no reason not to just be the brightest light by themselves. And I think, obviously the lack of Sony is huge. Not having their, obviously, top of the line, always perfect, with the exception of Days Gone, IPs. But when it comes to just Sony not being there, you could also see it in the other conferences, specifically Capcom. And we kind of didn't talk about Capcom because their conference had nothing to talk about. But I wanted to save commenting on them until you brought up Sony, because I think there's a reason why there was basically nothing at Capcom. And a lot of Capcom games are affiliated with Sony. I know right now they have
that is fair.
Pragmata, which was that space suit astronaut guy with a girl in their original PlayStation 5 reveal trailer. I bet you that was one that they probably have content ready to go, but they're probably saving that for a Sony-directed thing. I know a lot of Resident Evils, 8 specifically, was revealed with Sony. Resident Evil 3 was revealed with Sony. And I think Resident Evil 2 was also revealed with Sony. And I think that's just a big deal. So you're not just
vastly.
You're not just not getting God of War, Last of Us, and Ghost of Tsushima. Please give me Ghost of Tsushima 2. You're not just not getting those IPs. You're also not getting their third-party connections, and I think it's evident. Maybe why we didn't hear a thing about Final Fantasy 7 Part 2, which it might be way too early for that, but I think there's a reason why we didn't get Final Fantasy.
That game took 7 years to come to us.
Oh yeah, I know, but maybe Final Fantasy 16, that might be a better one. But there's a reason why we didn't get those games. There's a reason why we didn't see Deathloop or Ghostwire Tokyo. Well, obviously, why would Xbox talk about those? But I think there's a reason why we didn't get those games, and it's because Sony is bigger than E3 at this point, and I'm willing to make that argument.
I'm not, and we can save that for another day because that'll be a rabid rabbit hole to go down. But I think, and you were there with me. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure you were there with me when I picked up my PS4 back in college.
Yes, I was.
And so we've been through some hoops here together throughout our lives in terms of gaming and seen some things. I remember back, with the PS4 and, just having these grandiose lineups. I mean, in previous years, we talk about the console wars, right? Mm-hmm. And who won E3. Nobody can really win E3 when it's just Microsoft really there. I mean, you have Nintendo, but I'm not gonna say lost, but Nintendo's just done its own thing, not really for hardcore gamers, but for its niche diehard IPs. And they don't need a Witcher to come to Nintendo. They don't need a Fallout or Skyrim to come to Nintendo, because people are going to, in troves, money in hand, go for Breath of the Wild. So they don't really need to. But it's kind of sad just be like, all right, who won? Well, Microsoft clearly won. And I think they could have won even if Sony was there. I mean, look at the value of Game Pass. Look at the value of their acquisition of Bethesda. You just don't have That's a lot of firepower. You don't. It's hard to combat that with Sony, which there was a rumor circulating around the time of E3 that Sony might acquire Epic Games because of their footprint on the PC platform, which would be, you want to talk about game changers. You go from getting beaten over the head by value of Xbox Game Pass and people, including myself, undeniably wanting to flock to that, and you add the Epic Game Store, which is still a flawed store, and you add some sort of library like that. That's amazing. I played Horizon Zero Dawn on my PC. Amazing frame rate. Amazing graphics. You gotta, with market shares, and we talked about it multiple times, with your money being hard earned, you want to place it somewhere, you got to give reason for people to go to this. And E3 is not some underground thing anymore. It's big time, Dom, and I think you'd agree with me that this is things that your casual gamer, we're in high school, we would be the nerds, hence the podcast name, very fitting. We would be, it's mainstream now. We'd be in the main clique talking about this. I mean, and I could be wrong, but I personally think that Sony just did a big whoopsie. Now, they could come out with like a direct message and just blow our socks off, and I'll just eat my words. But that was my 2 cents on that. And we've been through the weeds here on E3. Is there anything else in the gaming world, Dom, that is moving your radar, whether it's a game you're playing, whether it is some news that came out, anything like that that's moving your radar?
Well, there's definitely a couple things before I actually get into a couple games that I have been playing. A couple things happened during E3 that I think is worth talking about, even if it's just for a couple minutes.
Sure.
Number one,
for sure,
and I know this is something that you wanted to mention, that Cyberpunk is coming back to the PlayStation Store after being off it for over 6 months.
And I love that game, but I'm still making groan noise.
So, why is that? I never played it.
It's as flawed of a game it is. I love that game. You want to go into Mass Effect, which came out recently, which is, I do too. Just beat all 3 again. You get to the ending of that, you feel like everything you did for the last couple of hours, like 40, didn't matter as much. And Cyberpunk has 3 distinct endings. Now, granted, you end up in the exact same place each time, but it's totally different for the most part of how you get there and kind of the reception you get. And it was amazing, crafting system, guns. I'd love to see a transmog system, admittedly. But the reason why I groan is because that game is not meant for current gen in the slightest. I have an RTX 2080 NVIDIA card in my PC, and I'm pushing that puppy to get the ray tracing, to get, solid frame rates on 2K monitor. And you're telling me that in the pandemic, we've worked out the kinks. We've worked out not everything, obviously, but a lot of things like that just made the game breaking look horrible. I mean, it looked like I'm sorry, but a 1080, Wii U game almost originally. So I just, it as much as it needs to make money, and I would love to see a Cyberpunk 2078, it needs DLC. It needs something. It needs to go, hey, we made a mistake. We shouldn't be on current gen, or not current gen, excuse me. PS4, the current gen Xbox, we shouldn't be on that. This game just can't run. And granted, that's something that doesn't necessarily happen all the time, but it is a concern when you get these games that are supposed to run on both. I would much rather just see them, admit, hey, we're wrong, and then someday pump it out and just focus on DLC.
Oh yeah. And when it comes to like CD Projekt Red, I mean, this isn't the first game that they. I mean, this is the first game that has been released from them on this level. Let's be honest. But I know when The Witcher 3 originally came out, it had some bugs. You know, it was a little rough, but it got turned.
And so was any game.
Oh yeah,
granted,
yeah. And it got turned around relatively quick. But this game, it's Cyberpunk. I almost feel like I don't know if there's any coming back from it. But then again, No Man's Sky got turned around, and a lot of people like it. Fallout 76.
That had a rough.
Oh yeah,
that had a rough delivery. Not critically acclaimed. It had like 5 out of 10s, 4 out of 10s all over the board.
Oh yeah, and Fallout 76 came out pretty rough. I think that one got turned around. It seems like a lot of people have a lot of positive things to say about that game. So like that being said, I'm hopeful that the fan base of Cyberpunk can get good. Can get a good product. I'm sure they're fine.
I'll carry that banner.
Gamers. They're already good. Don't calm down, Cyberpunk players. But I personally think what Cyberpunk needs is everything you kind of said. Like, yes, it needs to get fixed. You know, as far as new content, like it needs to get fixed first. But what I think it needs to come to Game Pass. It needs to show up Xbox Series S and X enabled quality features. Put it on Game Pass. Put it on PlayStation Plus. Let us download it and get the community back. And then you drop your $30 expansion. And I mean, the game already made enough money, but I think once they get it at a good quality, they got to get it into as many players as possible. And then they got to give us a really good package. Because I'll be honest, as somebody who wanted to check it out, I canceled my pre-order the second I started seeing stuff. I luckily was...
As you should have.
And I want nothing to do with it. I will not touch this game. But you put it on Game Pass, and I start seeing some positive things. You put it on PlayStation Plus, and I could just add it to my library and download it whenever. That'll work. And I think that's what they need to do. But, I mean, everyone has already talked about Cyberpunk to death. Like, we don't think we need to get into the fact that this was wrong. They shouldn't do this. And a lot of people got scammed out of their money from this. But, yeah, this game...
There's a lot of shady stuff going behind the scenes on that puppy. And mostly from their marketing departments and above head. It doesn't... Sadly, a lot of victims in this are the developers.
A lot of victims are definitely developers that knew this, you know. But at this point, if this game can't turn itself around, you know, I hope CD Projekt Red can... I know they're working on a new IP. I'm pretty sure they're doing a Witcher 4. I'm not 100% sure.
Witcher 1 reboot, baby, please.
No idea. But, you know,
if only.
I hope they turn themselves around. I know they're a great company. They're full of great people. But, yeah, this one, I think, is just a message that it's not just a message for the company and the marketing and their publisher, but also gamers. Don't get on this hype train, you know? Don't be like me and getting really excited about Metroid Dread, all right? That game could be really bad. I hope not, but it could be, you know? And definitely don't act, you know, I feel bad for the people who are looking at Elden Ring, you know? If that game comes out and it isn't a 10 out of 10, you know...
It's a poo-poo.
Exactly. Like, it's going to get a lot of rough, so... I hope another game never comes out like Cyberpunk did. But yeah, this game, I hope they do fix it, and I hope they put it on Game Pass. I hope they put it on PlayStation Plus, and they get it in some gamers' hands. They get some sort of redemption, and I hope their reception as a company is you know, kind of lifted, like Hello Games was with No Man's Sky. You know, that's honestly what I hope happens. But we'll see. You know, this game may disappear like Anthem. It may just poof and just never come back.
You stopped saying games, Dom, that I loved.
Oh, I am sorry.
You stopped doing that. You stopped taking shots. You liked
Anthem.
Oh, I loved Anthem, except for the crappy frame rate. I thought it was a great game with great mechanics. Poorly executed.
Did we play the same game?
I'm looking at the core of that, and we can get that at a later date. But I'm looking at the core of that, and like I play. And granted, I play Cyberpunk on PC, so I have a PC that's probably, and you can get a solid step up from any console still right now in a PC. Ray tracing, everything else, it's beautiful. I have screenshots on my computer that just pop, with the ray tracing and everything else. So there's a lot to be there. Remains to be seen. Hopefully they can get the core gamers back in that. I'll carry that banner till my grave. But yeah, is there? We talked about a lot, Dom. Is there anything else you want to cover in this episode here? The first ever episode of the N.E.R.D podcast.
Everwild got rebooted, and it makes me really sad, but I hope the game still comes out and it's good. All I want to say.
That would be, Oh, just a quick segue. Do you remember, I've never played the original game because I think it came out on like PS1. Mm-hmm. Beyond Good and Evil. Beyond Good and Evil 2 has been being teased as much as Final Fantasy 7 was, or even Final Fantasy 13 Versus, which turned into 15. Where the hell is that game? I ask you. Somebody put that game on a milk carton. We need to find out. We need to know where it's at. I want some of it because that last trailer was dope.
That game is dead.
And it's dead.
That game
it's probably just like
dead.
6 feet under.
Well, the director of the game, I cannot remember his name. I know he's really popular. He's one of the big ones, He's been in industry forever. But he left. He left the project, and I know the project's already had some difficulty.
Not a good sign.
Not a good sign. The project's already had some difficulty getting off the ground in the first place. And the fact that it's still not there, I mean, that game is a lot like, that pirate game from Ubisoft. Yeah, I don't think it exists anymore. I really think those games are just gone. I think, you remember how you mentioned there was a list of games that are never going to come out? Yes, yeah. Right at the ending is going to be
Beyond Good
and Evil 2.
Sadly. Yeah. But, what can you do, sadly? Dom, how do you want to send us out today?
Well, I do want to say, for anyone who listened to our very first episode, this is something that Brian and I've known you for, almost 10 years now. We probably met about 9 years ago.
2013, baby. Iowa State Daily. Read it. Yeah. Journalism isn't dead.
We're both alumni to Iowa State University. We've been talking about doing this podcast for years, Like, we always joked about it. And this has always been a dream for me. I worship the guys at Kind of Funny, the ladies at What's Good Games, obviously IGN. We love IGN.
That's what got us into gaming a lot, or most of us.
Oh, yeah.
Just reading those articles.
It took me from a filthy Call of Duty casual to, playing, to playing games like Shovel Knight, which was a game that I would have never touched, but it really, it started me on the path it was. So doing this is a dream, and to anyone who listens to this, whether it's one person, my mother, thank you for your time, and I hope this journey, goes exactly where we want it to, which is just, having fun and doing this. However often we do it, wherever this goes, thank you very much for everyone.
Here, I definitely concur on that. You can blame me as your dream killer for all the times I said I would do it and then just got busy. So I'll take my lumps for that, but it is fun. I'm glad we were able to do that. You've been a good friend, a patient friend with me for almost a decade here since 2013. So, let's have fun. Audience, we love you. Anybody who's listened to this ragtag first episode that we've done, we basically planned this in like a week. Thank you. We're just a bunch of average Joes just wanting to talk about gaming. If you like gaming, you want gaming suggestions for the future to know what's going on, stuff to get excited about, to throw your hard-earned money at, listen to us, tell your friends. We'd love to keep doing this, and we'll just keep doing this as long as somebody's listening. So from us here on this side of the mic to you guys, my name is Brian Achenbach. That's Dom Spizzirri, and I can't say names, so I'm going to have you cut that.
Oh, no, that's staying.
Oh, crap. Well, my name is Brian Achenbach. That's Dom Spizzirri, and let's get nerdy.